All right, brother, you ready to roll? Talk some Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, man. We might as well, right?
Yeah, Titans finished last year in the division, 6-11 record. Their win total this year is set at 6.5, very close to what it was last year. Some key losses. This team is very reshaped going into 2024. Derrick Henry, their guy for 8 years, gone. Baltimore. Ryan Tannehill, Aziz Al-Shaair, Danico Autry, Sean Murphy Bunting, Christian Fulton, a lot of players, but they did bring in a lot of talent. Calvin Ridley, L'Jarius Sneed, Lloyd Cushenberry, Chidobe Awuzie, Kenneth Murray, Tony Pollard, Tyler Boyd. Now, usually when you get a team like this that brings in a ton of free agents, there's some initial success and then it kind of falters. I'm curious your thoughts on the Titans, Reagan. Where do you have them ranking in the division? How many wins? I know this was your team last year. They let you down a little bit. Are you optimistic again heading into 2024?
I mean, I got them going 7-10. I will say, like, this is so. I'm optimistic in the sense I did throw some money on them to win the division. That's me being bold, courageous, ferocious. But no, from being like in a more, I guess you could say, like down to earth, kind of realistic type of guy. I have them going in 7-10. I think the team improves. I think there's still a lot of holes on the defense. I mean, you just highlighted two of their biggest losses this year went over to Houston, which we'll get into more of that later.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
obviously get Simmons, you got Sneed, so that's huge, but there's still a lot of holes on this defense. And while you did fix the offense, I mean, I'm excited for J.C. Latham. I think he'll pair nicely with Skaronski, and Cushenberry should be good. So you have 3 out of your 5 should be solidified. The Will Levis is such a question mark here. I mean, he showed a lot of flashes. I mean, he's obviously a big guy with a big arm, so there's a lot of potential there. And it helps that you go out and get Tyler Boyd and Calvin Ridley, and obviously a Conquo is coming into year 3 in this system. I like him a lot. He's very dynamic. Um, and the running backs, obviously Tajay Spears, who I talked about before, I'm excited for, and Pollard. I mean, while I don't think he's got a ton left in the tank, I mean, he's still better than just rolling with Spears and one of the other guys you drafted. So, I mean, they definitely went out and got a lot of guys. I just think there's still too many holes on this team for them to really compete in this division. I think they can win a couple division games and definitely be in the thick of things. I don't think it's going to be the trade deadline and they're like, we're selling, sell, we're out. I definitely think they'll be in it till at least December. I just don't know if they have enough. And it really comes down to Will Levis. And I'm just not fully sold on him. I can see the potential, and he's a guy I'm trying to get in Dynasty. I've taken him in a couple best ball drafts super late in the off chance that, hey, maybe he takes a big year 2 jump. And then I got this guy in the last round or second to last round as my number 2, number 3 quarterback. And now I can plug him in and he's putting up big weeks. Because I look at that Miami game he had where he had like 2 rushing touchdowns, had a ton of yards, and went into Miami and beat him. So we've seen him beat some good teams, but I don't know. But I am excited for Callahan as well.
Wow, I agree. I also have them at 7-10. I think they're improved on paper. Sharp predicts them to have the 6th most difficult schedule this season, which is not ideal for Will Levis. Offensively, I like the Latham pick. Like, it was so obvious they were going to go tackle, but there's just like, I know it's scout the player, not the helmet, but there's just such a bad track record of Alabama tackles panning out. Like, the only one I could say off the top of my head that has lived up to it is Cam Robinson, but still, he got picked really early and had some injury concerns. So I hope that Latham develops into that guy, but still, rookie left tackle is just not ideal for a young quarterback. I like Skaronski. Cushenberry was ranked as the 10th best center in the league, according to Pro Football Focus last year, was 3rd in pass pro. That's huge for Will Levis' development. Clearly, their additions show they're trying to aid Levis's development, adding all those receivers. Levis had the lowest completion rate in the league last year, but a problem with that was that he was pushing the ball downfield a ridiculous amount, just chucking deep balls to DeAndre Hopkins. Like his first game, I think he had 4 touchdown passes, was just chucking it deep. So I'm not sold on Levis. I think he's a little sporadic. I think he's inaccurate. We touched on Tony Pollard earlier. I think he has a decently bounce back season. I don't think he's going to be elite by any stretch of the means, but I think he'll be better than when he was last year. Treylon Burks just seems like a waste of a pick. You traded A.J. Brown, who has been a top 5 to 7 receiver over the last 2 years. You use that pick on Burks, and now you just sign guys, traded for guys over him. So not ideal offensively. You lose your identity with Derrick Henry. I don't love this offense, to be honest with you. I do think the receivers will be fine. Will help Levis. I think Levis will be better than last year, but I think they're going to go at the end of the season and be like, all right, we don't think we have our guy long term. Defensively, really not a great front. They're kind of lacking edge rushers. Simmons was good last year, not for his standards, though. I mean, he had 13 run stuffs, 12.8% pressure rate, which is good from the interior, but we've seen Simmons be better, so a bounce back would be big for this defense. Harold Landry, solid, had 10.5 sacks last year. Outside of him, though, they're missing some talent. I mean, they brought over Kenneth Murray from the Chargers, who got picked in the first round. Big shoes to fill with Azeez Al-Shaair leaving and going to Houston, who led the team in tackles last year. So big addition for Houston, big loss for Tennessee, and you're taking Murray, who never lived up to his draft status in L.A., and that's a whole nother conversation. I don't believe in taking linebackers in the first round of the draft, but neither here nor there. I love the secondary, though. L'Jarius Sneed, best season of his career last year with the Chiefs, all-pro player. How we transition to a new scheme to be determined, but I like him a lot. Awuzie has looked really good for Cincinnati. Last year, he was not good, but the 3 years before, he was really good. So their safeties are fine. Hooker's solid. Molden's not that good. He's kind of liability. I don't know. They drafted Tavondre Sweat, the defensive tackle out of Texas, in the second round, who weighed in at 366 pounds of the combine. So you hope he can develop into a big run stuffer. He's shown it. He can pass rush from the interior given his size, but he did have that DUI before the draft. Not ideal. He's going to have to get in better shape. Ultimately, I think it's a better roster on paper than it was last year. Just Will Levis is dragging him down for me. 7-10. I think they're finishing last in the division once again this year.
Now, my question for you is where do you see, what do you project for Will Levis in year two? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think he's going to prove that he's not the starter and Tennessee's going to be drafting someone next year? Is he going to prove enough to keep the job? What do you see?
I think it's going to be one of those situations where it's like, we're not sold he's the franchise guy, but he wasn't terrible. But also, what are their alternatives? Because next year's
if they go 7-10, you'd imagine
they're picking around. Yeah, they could, but it's not a great quarterback class. So it's like, okay, now you're in the situation where you're like, okay, did we think Levis was a better prospect coming out than a Shador Sanders or a Carson Beck? If even they fall that far, just because quarterbacks always get driven up the board, I don't know. Maybe they roll with Levis another year after this if he plays like I expect him to. I just think he's inaccurate. I think he's a little sporadic. I think he's still going to struggle. That right side of the offensive line is still really bad. You're relying a lot on a rookie left tackle. Levis under pressure is not what you want to see, but I think his stats will certainly be better because his wide receiver room's a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I see the floor for him being a guy that's not starting next year, a guy that maybe even gets benched mid-season. I think his ceiling is he really becomes the guy that we saw in college, the reason why he was getting talked about as a first-round pick, even though he did fall into the second round, the guy that's got this big arm, very big quarterback that can do it. And these weapons are a huge addition for him. And he leads Tennessee to maybe not the division title, but somehow, some way they sneak into the playoffs, and it's because of Will Levis. So I'd say that's his ceiling. I definitely think he has the potential to be a top 15, top 12 fantasy quarterback. Probably not.
You think he'd be a QB1?
I think
no way he's a QB1.
I think back end, just because of the arm talent and the fact that he does have a little bit of rushing upside with that big frame, that he might be able to run a few in, get some QB sneaks, and really push it up by some rushing touchdowns. But that would be in the perfect storm that he would end up being a back end quarterback one, not one of those guys that you can start on bye weeks and stuff, or hey, maybe I got a Matt Stafford or an Aaron Rodgers or some of those guys that are back end QB1s, and I like the matchup better for Will Levis. Let me play him over them. Type of guy.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's going to be in the 20s ranked.
I mean, it's still, that's not bad.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
He's going to be in the 20s.
Or is that his ceiling?
No, I'm not saying it's a ceiling. That's realistically. I think his ceiling is QB 16. I think it's a ceiling.
I mean, that's kind of what I said. Back end quarterback 1, low end quarterback 2. Okay. If his ceiling's 16, then you agree with me that he's a guy you can start in bye weeks. And
back end quarterback 1 is 10 to 12.
Yeah, back end quarterback 1, but if you're saying he's 16, that's a guy you can play in bye weeks, or if you like the matchup better, you might play him over.
But
odds are, if he's 16, he's probably on your roster because you have another quarterback that's older that you're starting, but you're looking for a guy with that high upside.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I started him last year in the fantasy championship. He got me -2 and got hurt. So I don't know. It's kind of got to. I'm not the biggest Will Levis fan.
Did you win your championship?
Oh yeah, I did. Thanks to Isaiah Likely, Devontae Adams, shout out, and Brees Hall.
That's hilarious. You could have started me. You could have started Drock. You could have started yourself. We would have gotten more points.
I could have put Drock's bald ass in at quarterback super flex, and I would have scored more points.
Oh man!
All right, Reagan. Let's move on to the
wait.
Oh, whoa! That's right. We forgot this last time.
Again.
We forgot this last time. Drock's pissed. All right.
It's funny that
we'll let Drock say his lock, and then we'll get into our MVPs and stuff for the team. Drock, what's your lock?
Kind of funny that we're talking and shitting on Will Levis. Drock's lock is Will Levis most regular season interception thrown at +1,000.
Oh, I like that. That's juicy.
He's the fourth, I guess, favorited quarterback to throw
who's ahead of him?
Interceptions in the league. So +1,000 is really not that bad. So
who's ahead of him?
I think Josh Allen.
Yeah, makes sense.
Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that makes sense too, and from the aspect that obviously they are. What was I going to say? They're rookies. They're going to make a lot of mistakes, and then the Josh Allen thing makes sense. I mean, for as talented as he is, the guy freaking bleeds interception. I mean, he just is a turnover machine. But you live with it because of how talented he is.
Yep.
Yeah, but let's get into our MVPs of the team. I mean, for me, it would probably be Jeffrey Simmons, just returning to that all-pro form, a guy that should be in that debate of the number one guy with Chris Jones, Quinnen Williams, and Dexter Lawrence. I mean, we've seen him do that. So it would be him returning to that form and really stabilizing the defense, being the run stopper he is, and then, helping Tennessee, because that's my bigger concern is the defense right now. So if they can play at least at middle of the pack and give this team a chance to win games where they don't have to rely on Will Levis to put up 20-plus points in each game to even have a chance to win, that would be huge. I mean, I guess it's more of an X factor, but he would be my MVP because he's their best player.
All right. You're Depoy as well, obviously.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I got Simmons as Depoy. I went a different route for MVP. I went Calvin Ridley.
Wow.
I think Calvin Ridley is the guy that can unlock Will Levis. And I think if Calvin Ridley eclipses 1,000 yards with Will Levis, it really aids his development, which is why I think he's the most valuable to this team, because this team goes where Will Levis goes. If Will Levis struggles, if he's being pressured, if he turns the ball over, they're not going to win a lot of games. If Will Levis takes that next step, I think Calvin Ridley's a monster piece of that, and he's the MVP. You like that call?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting one, but I can see where you were talking about there.
X Factor, Reagan, go.
Brian Callahan is my X Factor. Because the big reason he got this job was for his work as the OC for the Bengals last year. He made Jake Browning look like basically a slight downgrade from Joe Burrow. Slight downgrade. So a lot of it, and that was the reason he got the job, because of the good work he did there. They had a winning record with him. They were still competing till the end. The Bengals finished the season with a winning record. And if you told me that when they were 5-5 and they lost Joe Burrow, that they'd still end the season with a winning record and almost make the playoffs, I'd have been like, you're crazy.
Yep.
But he made Jake Browning look like a legit NFL quarterback. So he is my X factor here. Is he the quarterback whisperer that can figure out Will Levis and help him take that second step or that year two jump? Can he put it all together? I mean, they obviously went out and got the weapons. He brought Tyler Boyd over with him as well. They have 3 good wide receivers. You got Chikakonkwo. You got the 2 running backs in Pollard and Spears. You drafted J.C. Latham. You took Skoronski in the first round. You get Cushenberry. So this offense got a lot of weapons. I mean, nobody's really elite on this team, but, you have a good team, or a good enough team. So he's my X factor. Can he put it all together and mastermind it and put this team in a good spot? Because think about it. Mike Vrabel also got fired for this guy. And a lot of people question that because it was a down year, but the guys were always playing well. And Mike Vrabel had the Titans in the playoffs pretty much every year and always competing at a high level. It always seemed like they were the underdog by a couple points on a Monday night, a Sunday night, a Thursday night football game against the Chiefs or the Bills. And they would just pull it out in a Derrick Henry type running game fashion. So it'll be interesting to see if Callahan can have this team in a spot to win this year.
Yeah, I like that call. I mean, also getting Bill Callahan, his father, to coach the offensive line that was 30th in pressure rate allowed last season and 28th in yards allowed before contact on running back runs is also an addition that's huge for that team. So I like it. The Callahan boys. My X factor, J.C. Latham. the rookie left tackle. Can you protect Will Levis's blind side and allow him to read the defense and develop mentally processing? If Latham struggles really bad out of the gate, they really don't have any other viable options. It's a team that desperately needs help along the offensive line. We touched on it last year before the season. I was like, I'm trading Derrick Henry in my league because I hate this offensive line. Latham is such a big X factor for me. Again, like Calvin Ridley, just to help Will Levis. All right, rookie of the year. I'm going Latham. Just touched on it. Who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going Latham as well. I mean, obviously, it was kind of questioned, that pick. And I know the Chargers are even reports that they may take him in at 5. But out of all the offensive linemen, he was one of the biggest question marks. And I was kind of shocked they took him at 7. I don't think it's a bad pick. I think they definitely should have gone offensive line. I think they're really hoping for Joe Alt to fall to 7. Obviously, he didn't. Yeah. I didn't expect him to with Harbaugh and his coaching style, but he's the biggest question mark. But he's the guy that they put the capital in, and some would say reached on. But you know what? He's clearly Callahan's guy. You would think the father was in his ear saying, "We got to go get this guy," being the offensive line coach. So I think he'll be coached up well, and I'm excited for what he can do. He may end up being the best tackle in the draft, at least in year 1.
Yeah, it's a good point, though. Bill's definitely in his ear. Like, I like Latham a lot.